I'll tell you something else that I think is sticking in Joel Embiid's craw. He wanted the 76ers, with all the changes they made. Remember, they went and got Caleb Martin. They went and got Kyle Lowry. That means they went and made deals with players who play for the Miami Heat. He wanted another player from the Miami Heat. He wanted Jimmy Butler. He wanted the 76ers. He told them, go get my guy. And we know at the end of the season where Jimmy Butler sat with the Heat, Pat Riley calling him out and saying he should play more and everything else, and didn't get a contract extension. So it felt like there was some level of opening, at least tangentially, to go get Jimmy Butler. I don't think the discussions, Ice, ever truly got serious to a point that you could even say, okay, they're in a deal zone now. Like this can happen. But I don't think Joel Embiid has been happy, even though they wound up getting Paul George. He wanted Jimmy Butler back over there. And I think he made that known. And they couldn't make it happen. So I'm not saying he's pouting, but I'm saying that there's a lot going on there. And Ice, this is the other thing for me. Tyrese Maxey has to call out Joel Embiid in this team meeting. He's a player. He's a player who's hurt. And even though he's an all-star and has a close relationship with Joel Embiid, like by everything I was told, it was not some confrontational meeting. It was one where, those guys have a lot of sweat equity with each other, and it wasn't taken personally. Here's my question, Ice. Daryl Morey is there. He's the president of basketball operations. Nick Nurse is the head coach. That's the leadership.
Right.
It's time for the head coach and the GM to be the head coach and the GM. If a player needs to be called out, it's one thing for player accountability. I'm 100% with Tyrese Maxey. He didn't step out of place. He didn't step out of line with that.
Yeah, absolutely not.
But for me, I think it was much more incumbent on Daryl Morey and Nick Nurse to step forward and be, if you're the leaders of this team, if you're the guys on the masthead, you guys need to be the ones, because let's say that conversation doesn't go well, right? No matter what happens to me, no matter what happens from this point, Ice, yeah, those guys have a great relationship, but what happens if the wrong thing is said or someone takes something the wrong way? And now you got a relationship that's tarnished because you two didn't step up to do your job as leaders of this franchise. You're 2-11. You guys should be calling team meetings.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. And I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure what maybe they were waiting on. He's only played 3 games this season. Maybe they were waiting to see if he would play out of it, right? As a player who's gone through injury, it attacks every part of you. It attacks the mental, the physical, the spiritual, right? The energy level, being in a gym, knowing that your body's not doing what it wants to do. Joel Embiid has told us that he's had frustrations with his body, not healing the way it should and not doing what he's asking it to do. And this is a player last year that averaged 34 points in the season. This is a player that was top 5 in the world at playing a game. And so I think he is going through obviously some struggles with the injury. Maybe leadership was trying to see if he would play out of it and if it would get better. Maybe you wait until, Paul George, who just got off minutes restriction, looks a little bit more consistent. And maybe I think they were just waiting for a couple of games for it to get there. But I think what I like about the situation the most is that Tyrese Maxey was like, nah, we can't wait. Yes, you called this meeting. Yes, we have to have a conversation. But leadership starts with the coaching staff and GM, but it also starts with the players. It starts with the main players. We know that they rock the boat. They tip the scale every single time. And so I like that, we saw that Joel Embiid was, willing to take this criticism, not taking it personally. That shows that you're a vet, that you understand what's expected of you. And hopefully he grows in that. I think there's just still is a question about all of these things we're talking about are the intangible things, right? There is still a question about him getting on the court and getting in shape and getting back to playing basketball. Then there's still a question about chemistry for this team. They picked up so many new players. They haven't been able to play with their big 3 on the same court yet this season. And they're 2-11, right? And so then there's an added amount of pressure that once these players do return, they're trying to build chemistry. You're building it under a mountain of pressure because you're already at the bottom of the league. Yeah, there's time to turn it around, but I think the time in which this meeting came was very timely and necessary. I'm with you. I think Leadership from Nick Nurse and Morey should have stepped in a little bit earlier, but we're here now. A player said something. Hopefully that made everybody kind of get like, okay, we need to wake the hell up and figure it out and move forward.
And think about this from Tyrese Maxey's standpoint. Think about what he has sacrificed theoretically to this point. Remember, y'all, Tyrese Maxey waited to get his extension so that the 76ers could have cap space to go get a Paul George. Usually, that is not standard operating procedure in the NBA. If you are a max player, you go get your money as soon as possible, especially when you have people who you're not sure if they're going to kick it that way and still give you that max contract if you wind up getting hurt. Remember all the stuff about James Harden saying Daryl Morey is a liar and I'll never trust him again and everything else. That stuff, whether it's true or not, when players go out of their way to be so blatantly disrespectful to the person in charge, people in the league, people around the league, players talk, people around the league find out what you are made of. And no matter what you think of James Harden, not everybody thought that he was wrong. Not everybody thought that he was crazy and lying and everything else. All right, cool. Put that to the side. Put Tyrese Maxey stuff to the side. It's getting very late, very early. Yeah. At 2-11, you're looking at the standings and you're saying, oh, okay, the East isn't that great. You're right, the East isn't that great. But Ice, remember they told us in the beginning, they told us in the very beginning, we're going to slow walk this thing so that we want to be ready for the postseason. If you don't get a top 3 seed in the Eastern Conference, you're not going to the finals. Period, point blank. Like you've had an 8 seed go to the finals, but by and large, it's the 1 or the 2 seed that goes to the finals. And in some cases, it's the 3 seed. Like I went through this a few episodes ago, maybe a month or so ago with Bomani about, just how hard it is to do this if you only have home court advantage in round 1. And the 76ers have not made a conference final since 2001. And I was a junior in high school. Okay. I ain't that young no more, y'all. And Ice, you talked about the chemistry on the floor. And here's something that people need to know. Comparatively, the New York Knicks are landlocked. The Milwaukee Bucks are landlocked in terms of personnel moves that you can make and improving your team throughout the course of this season. That's not the case with the 76ers. They still have their draft picks. They can still maneuver around a little bit. Even, Daryl Morey, as bad as he is with the people stuff, he can be really good with the numbers. But you can't evaluate your team in essence of the trade deadline until you figure out what players are on the floor, what they look like. I can't tell you what you need unless I actually see it on the floor. You're second to last in offensive efficiency. You are last in field goal percentage, second to last in the 3-point line, second to last in rebounding, and the defense hasn't been bad, but if your offense is this bad, if your player availability is this bad, Ice, I can't help you.
It don't matter. It don't matter.
To me,
it's tough being a Sixers fan. This is actually why I've never really considered myself a Sixers fan, is because there's always something. You don't understand that term when your mother says it when you're young. Like, it's always something. You don't get that until you're an adult or until you decide to become a Sixers fan and you understand that it's always something. Okay, that was just me complaining.
No. Or if you are a former Detroit Lions fan, of which I quit them well over 20 years ago. And now that they're about to go to the Super Bowl, you know who's not jumping back on that bandwagon? This guy. No matter what y'all say, I ain't never coming back. Now, I'm never coming back, please. I gave up toxic relationships a long time ago. Me and you can have a conversation about toxic relationships after the show, but no more toxic relationships. Now, the thing I do want to point out, because Ice, you talked about having had injuries and having had surgery. I don't think anybody's taking away from Joel Embiid being hurt. The body is the body. Like, some dudes have bad bodies, some dudes have bad limbs. Like, I don't get sometimes the consternation over Kawhi Leonard. Sometimes if you're hurt, you can't play. What Tyrese Maxey, I think, was talking about, hey, man, if you're here, show up on time. Those are things that you can control. You can control showing up for whatever treatment, rehab, practices, and everything else that you're going to get. Those are things that you can control while you're trying to work your way back. The work ethic, the showing up and being an example. Even if you're not on the floor and Tyrese Maxey ain't on the floor, you know how hard it is for Tyrese Maxey to step up and use his voice when he's not playing? Dudes usually not playing don't want to be heard from because they know ain't nobody trying to hear from them. But he was the one who had to step up because he was the only one with the sweat equity with Embiid. So for Embiid to basically not be doing the things that he should be doing to get himself back on the floor, even if he can't, that speaks volumes about how important this is for him and how important this is for everybody else.